Lauren R.E. Larkin of Sancta Colloquia. And I am here today with a discussion about a book that I read a while ago that I have found some time to engage with in a real way. And rather than writing a book review on my blog, I decided it would be fun to talk about it in person. I'm sort of inconsistent with what I put on my blog and what I do here in video. I guess I'm still trying to dabble with whether or not I want to have a YouTube channel. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, I see the boys doing it and I figure I can do this too. All right. So I am looking at today a novel by the name of by the title of The Lover. And it is a Sufi mystery and it's by Laury Silvers. And I really enjoyed it. And I just want to talk about it briefly right now. Just up front, I'm not analyzing the text like I would or like I've done with something like Stoner by John Williams or Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. I'm not engaging from a theological perspective. I'm not dismantling it. I'm not, at least those aren't definitely not any of my goals. Really, this experience that I had reading this novel was something completely different. I don't know really how to put words to it, except for the fact that I definitely was aware of my being on the outside. This story wasn't about me. It wasn't about my race. It wasn't about my faith. It wasn't about my normal day-to-day life. There's history in it. There's religion in it. There's dialogue. There's conceptions of God in such a way that I felt that I was definitely in the learning position as an observer, as a quiet observer. And so I am speaking from that perspective. The Lover, a Sufi mystery by Laury Silvers. And I encountered the book because I taught world religions last year with a group of juniors. And about halfway through, you find the students who are just kind of consistently always doing a bit more than their peers. And so I decided rather than have them do busy work at the end of the semester, I really wanted them to do something that they would really enjoy doing, right? Because learning happens best when we actually can employ new information with something that we love doing. One student of mine, she was studying Islam and she loved reading. Like I literally had to ask her, okay, during lecture, can you not read your book? I decided after speaking with her, I said, let me see if I can find, since you love reading so much, let me see if I can find a book for you to read that I think that would really teach you a lot about an aspect of Islam that you wouldn't otherwise know, and also tap into that fact that you love to read. I went on Twitter and I was introduced to a whole realm of feminist Muslim authors, and they are amazing. And I was just so honored to be advised by the author that she had written this book. And it was the first suggestion that to come in, but I also felt it was the most appropriate for my 16, 17-year-old student. And I'm so glad I chose it. And now that I've been introduced to this genre of literature, I am excited to keep engaging with it. But anyway, let me talk about the book. I talk about myself. All right. It's historical fiction and it's set over 4 days. And by historical fiction, what I mean is that it is set, hold on, I'm flipping to the page we're set, in Baghdad 295 or 907 current era. And the mystery takes place over 4 days. The first day is when they notice or a young boy has fallen off a roof and is dead. And so there's investigation. And it sort of seems like from the beginning that the cops kind of say, well, this is normal, considering it's 907 current era and you're in Baghdad, you're sleeping on a roof, especially if it's warm out, and roofs don't have fences and people roll off or stumble off, especially drowsy from sleep. And so it seems early on that the kind of authorities write it off as it's a slave boy, this happens, what are you gonna do? anyway, the main character is Zaytuna, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that name wrong. It's Zaytuna. And she is a faithful and devoted Sufi woman. And the story centers around her. Now, again, the centering of a Sufi devoted woman is one of the reasons that drew me to the book, that I was going to get her perspective. This is through her eyes. And also too, I know so little about the Sufi tradition in general. So that Laury, or I should say Mrs. Silvers, centers this woman, Zaytuna. She's the core of the story. And so this idea of love and the lover is going to thread back through her and out. And so she gets pulled into this mystery through a little slave girl. And she is intrigued by it. There's something in her intuition that says, no, it's more than just what the authorities are saying. And so she sets off over a 4-day journey to figure out what happened to Zayd. And I am mispronouncing his name too, but it's Zayd. And so anyway, so she sets off on a journey to figure this out. What has happened to this young servant boy? And we can't just blow it off because he's a servant boy or a slave. That's not okay to do. And so in this novel, you have tons of social justice and calling attention to a myriad of problems, the way that women are treated and the way that slaves are treated, and just very pertinent topics to be talking about. And in fact, Ms. Silvers, in her dedication, apart from Michael, who she calls her champion, also too, in memory of the women, some named but mostly unnamed, some remembered but mostly forgotten, who lived their love of God despite everything. Okay, historically speaking, women who are ardent, devoted worshipers of God definitely go unnoted and lost. And this story is in some sort of worshipful defiance of those unnamed women. And so again, another reason why I chose it. Zaytuna's mom. So Zaytuna is a sister to Tien. Tien has some wounding. I won't go too much into his story. He is a side character to Zaytuna. A lovable character nonetheless. You understand his stuckness. Zaytuna's mom is a known Sufi mystic, pretty much a prophet, before there were female prophets. And she has a very prominent role in the background of Zaytuna's life. So you get glimpses of mom throughout, and Zaytuna is definitely wrestling with her relationship with her mom and the choices that her mom made. And wrestling with her own wounding from those choices and coming to terms and wanting to come to terms with those things. In what it seems like is that mom embodies her love of her God, Allah. And in this way, we have a woman who's embodied, because as a woman in 907 current era, you are relegated to the more earthy aspects of life, the social aspects, the birthing aspects, the taking care of other people, that community that really sort of manifests among women. And so there's a double embodiment, or a double emphasis on the embodiment of Zaytuna's mom, that she is a worshiper, she is in the embodied love. Like this is what Zaytuna is wrestling with. Like, if this is the love of God, that we abandon our children or put them through this or leave them behind at houses just to worship God and be a prophet, it almost feels like Zaytuna at the beginning doesn't want to have anything to do with it. But she herself is manifesting and embodying a love of God. There's another character. He is the good guy, the Mustafa, who's a student and is the kind of love interest of Zaytuna and potential spouse. And I love this character because, one, he is righteous, and he is a beautiful, he has beautiful love for Zaytuna, and you feel yourself as a Western white woman very much influenced by every happy ending story. You were like, come on, let's get together, get them together. But he just represents all that is righteous and obedient and loving. He adored Zaytuna. You get that feeling from the beginning. And in fact, it took me a while because I was like, I think that Mustafa is into her. But with the era, and Silvers does a great job staying in her era, the way that tension plays out is so beautiful and brilliant. Anyway, Zaytuna has no interest. Well, she does. She loves Mustafa, and that's clear. And so here's another layer. She loves her brother Tien, who has problems. She loves this little girl, and Zayd, who's dead, and she is taking care. She loves God. She loves Mustafa, and she is wrestling with, even just love of, and she loves her mother, but then wrestling with just what this actually demands. The book highlights really well the struggle of the Sufi culture from the beginning. And so that's another reason why I selected it, because I have spent more time in my limited time talking or learning about Sunni and Shia, and not so much about Sufi. And so I wanted to do that. I wanted to just read real quick pages from the text. But Mustafa kept quiet and took what knowledge was to be had. He told her that Uncle Abu al-Kazim advised him to hold his tongue. He told Mustafa that the scholars were suspicious of the Sufis and were only testing him to see where his loyalties lay. It wasn't that they were bad men. On the contrary, they only wanted to preserve their way to God's truth, just like the Sufis did. Uncle Abu al-Kazim said each has their way, and each way has its value and place. So he must learn as his uncle had from as many masters as he could, and let it all pass through the test of knowledge of the heart. Okay, so you get just glimpses of the Sufi struggle from the beginning, and the attention to detail in the retelling of history, to me, was very, I'm not an expert, but I was really drawn into the historical aspect of what was going on in the text. Zaytuna's loyalty was with Uncle Nuri and her mother, risking everything for the truth, but she also understood what made some scholars so angry about the Sufis. This is interesting. It wasn't just that women worshiped God openly among them. We were counted among their numbers and taught women and men alike. It wasn't just that some of these Sufis declared themselves to be passionately in love with God, and worse, to their pendant accusers, that God was passionately in love with them. It was not even that some declared themselves to be nothing other than God in moments of ecstatic seizure. It was their confidence that drove so many of these scholars mad, that the Sufis knew God intimately, directly, in a way that the scholars would never know through their books. The Sufis saw themselves drinking from the wellspring of knowledge directly, while they accused the scholars of cupping their hands to drink muddy water off the streets. Zaytuna knew too well that there was no reasoning with someone who drank from that divine source. The scholars would never be able to regulate that knowledge and what it made people do. She knew there was no way to get your mother. She knew there was no way to get your mother to stop preaching and simply be with you while she was in the state of experiencing being chosen by God. So here we have a double highlight. We have the highlight of history and the struggle and what's going on, and simultaneously a daughter's relationship with her mother and her mother's relationship with God. And so you have these manifold layers of love. Specifically looking at page 59, where we get a honed in zoom of the love of God. The Sheik's face became grave. His voice was still gentle on the surface, but the tone underneath had become more intense, its frequency pushing her just so to shift her from where she was stuck. Zaytuna, you are no longer a child. It's been 17 years, and still you will not accept that everything other than God dies. Everything perishes but his face. Not just people die. Not just the creatures of this world die. Even pain must die. I will say it again. Listen to me. Only love lives. Love lives forever, because all love, wherever we find it, its source is God, the lover's love. You know this. Your mother's love was an open stream from God to you. You lost the woman. You have not lost the love that came to you through her. Her mother, Zaytuna's mother, loved God, and Zaytuna interprets this as more than loving her. Okay, and she feels abandoned by her mom in these ecstatic moments. But what's being pointed out here in 59 as something that I love as a mom is the love of God moving through as a passage to the daughter. That Zaytuna's mom loved her daughter because she loved God. And as she loved God, she loved her daughter. And so we have a really beautiful image there. And Zaytuna struggles with her love and trust of God and with humanity. She's a skeptic to some degree, very much a skeptic who goes with her intuition and uses her skepticism wisely. In the book, as I mentioned before, you have underlying social justice concerns, the livelihood of servants. It's not okay that this servant boy is dead. We don't just roll him off the street or take care of his body for religious reasons. We actually do inquire about this life. The social justice concerns of women is prominent throughout the book. And again, what you have here is you have a woman, a Muslim Sufi woman who is being who is centered, and simultaneously her mom, who is a renowned Sufi prophet, in a very real and embodying the love of God way. You have just all the women are centered here. Even, Zaytuna has a female friend who's very prominent and kind of factors in this. The guys are on the outside, all right? And what Silvers has done in this concern for the place of women in this novel is she has sort of put the fringe on the inside and the inside on the fringe. And it's a really beautiful recentering and a good one. Underlying social justice concerns of God engaging with others apart from men. All right. So again, with the idea that women are being centered in this story, God is communing straight with these women. This is profound, and yet it is important because women are part of the image. Are part of the image of humanity and of the divine. The dealing with hierarchy of oppression. And then this, as we get through the story, we get this idea of the underground and the underground and the dealing with how the underground manifests and operates in opposition to the hierarchy and that kind of keeps oppression in place and the status quo in place. And how hierarchy and oppression and upholding the status quo is at the expense of human life, yet the underground group, the servant class, they have each other's back and they are for thriving and they are for life. Some of the other aspects that operate in defense of or support this social justice concern are the concepts of humility and love and forgiveness. And so here we go. I want to just flip over to page 127. And here we have a embracing. We have a moment where we get Zaytuna is trying to fall asleep. Tien is drunk and sort of on his way passing out. He rolls over onto all fours and crawled out through the curtain and fell asleep in front of the door, curled up, as their mother used to say, like the dog guarding the 7 sleepers in the cave. And here we have Zaytuna, who begins to fall asleep on her mat on the ground. And for the first night in a long time, she felt the sharpness of her bones against the hard earth underneath. And she's very ascetic in her practices. She is devoted servant of God. And so she eats very little, minimal sleep, is not married, does not, and this in its own right, and I'm borrowing this information, or I've learned this information from Dr. Kate Hanch, Reverend Dr. Kate Hanch, who has explained that the mystic women in Christianity often were the most free because they weren't bound by the structures of society of marriage and childbearing. And so this ascetic practice is another one of those, if you're paying attention, it's another one of those moments where this is in opposition to the normal of what's going on. And so Zaytuna in her ascetic practices, her devoted ascetic practices, is free in a way that a woman who is going along in the normal course of life is not. She heard her mother's voice, and she's falling asleep and she's starting to dream. She heard his mother's voice, always reminding her whenever she wished aloud that they had sheepskins to sleep on. The prophet told us that the earth said to the child of Adam, you put a cover between you and I. Tomorrow you will be inside me. And she felt the ground soften underneath her. She fell into the softness enveloping around her, the warm animal smell of the blanket following her down in dreams. She found herself walking up an old dried riverbed. She noticed a stream of water ahead, coursing through it down toward her. She pulled up her chemise, but it and her surwal were somehow already wet. Water pushed up against, then flowed around her calves in thick glossy ropes. She had never seen this stream before and wondered how she did not know it. The water was cool and clear. The stream bed of tumbled, smooth, translucent gems were refracting the white light that came, it seemed, from all directions into sparkling, glittering, multi-hued feelings that alighted on her. She looked down at the colors shining, flitting, then dissolving and soaking into her, flowing through her, then beyond her. She did not know what to do with all of them. One after another, she witnessed so many colored feelings coursing through her, overtaking each other. One would divert the stream of another. One would mix just so with the jeweled light opposite it, transforming its colored feeling to a new course. Then a different color would come to push those back until they were transmuted into another newly discovered emotion, finding a different way through her while still another saturated them all with its light, feeding them all, the light behind the light. She wondered at it. It announced itself to her, saying, I am love. So we have this dream and we have this re-emphasis, God as love. And for Zaytuna, Allah as love. And so love and acceptance and struggling and forgiveness and humility and forgiveness and humility and love. And Zaytuna is being softened by these dreams and softened by these encounters. And even in the pursuit of finding what happened to Zayd and solving that mystery, you get a clear picture of all this softening and the humility that's coming back to Zaytuna, who has been hardened due to this wrestling with, did my mom love me? What is love? And all those questions that we have as humans. So from page 253. So you will accept Mustafa? No, uncle, I can't, says Zaytuna. Your mother also had no time for men. Uncle, it's not like that. You think I don't know what it's like? I've never known one of my sisters here to be shy about what men have done to them. I wouldn't have time for men either. But I thought maybe Mustafa, you grew up with him. He's a kind man. He takes time to observe himself, to control his animal soul, and he loves you. I can't. I understand, little one. She put her hand on his in thanks, saying, oh, uncle, only you could call me little. You are taller than I. Then she looked at him, asking, uncle, I feel different from how I did before something happened. Uncle Abu al-Kazim did something to me. I heard, I can see. I don't know how, I'm not even sure, but I think I feel like I accept what has happened, all of it. My father, my mother, what I saw, I know it happened to her, but it happened to us. I don't understand it. Somehow I am grateful for everything, but my gratitude feels like a betrayal to them, to myself. She said, thinking of the old woman at the cemetery, I know I need to just keep stepping out to this gratitude. I know I need to trust. Maybe then I could find my way to Mustafa. I do love him. I just can't see my way to him now. He nodded. I've changed, but I've not changed. I'm still angry. I still miss her. If anything, I miss her more. I never knew her as she was. You are changing, little one, but this takes time. Everyone at their own pace. You have only tasted an infinitesimal drop of the ocean. You stand before the gate of the grateful. You stand before the gate of the acceptor. You stand before the gate of the lover. It is up to you whether or not you find a way through those gates. and you will not find a way to true witnessing as long as a single vein remains standing in your body. You must step ahead towards it. What if I cannot? He laughed lightly. Do you want to send me to your uncle Abu al-Kazim for a scolding? She did not laugh with him. He was not truly laughing. She saw in his eyes that she should be afraid, and she was. The gravity of her situation settled in on her, closing in on her chest, making it difficult to breathe. Would she put the chains back around her neck or let them go and step forward into love? Her heart beat right up into her throat. She tried to swallow it down, but her mouth was suddenly dry. She sat perfectly still, but within she was a child, flailing about, trying to push love away until another part of herself pulled it to her, holding love out to her. It's not what you want, it's what you need. She stopped writhing and pushing and looked at it. She reached out and took love, still afraid. She held love in her hands, not knowing if she held it right, if she might drop it, harm love somehow, ruin everything. That other part of herself spoke, tell God you are afraid and thank him. She couldn't find a way to say she was afraid, but she could at least hold her fear and the love she feared out to him. So she held out what he was forcing her to carry, her commitment to carry love without even knowing what that meant, her fear, all of it, and took one step forward, making herself say aloud, Alhamdulillah. Nuri saw and said, good. The fearful one runs from her Lord to her Lord. Love and acceptance, the struggle of forgiveness, the inside struggle of forgiveness, the collision of the love of God and the love of Mustafa come full force here. The collision of the love of mom and even the love of self and mom's love for God. And in here you see a beautiful combination of obedience and freedom and love and freedom, that as this love is handed out to her and the need for acceptance of it and receiving of it comes full force, and she is reckoning with herself here and all of her anger and all of her fear, and it's all coming out, and she is in the presence of a God who receives her and loves her. And this brings me to something that I really love about this book, is that one of the things that I have heard repeatedly from Christian ministers and clergy and some kind of novice apologists always argue that the Christian God is the God of love and no other God can be a God of love, and pointing out specifically that the God of Islam is not a God of love. And I've always wondered about that as I've started studying Islam, because I feel that not only the names of God, but that are the 99 names of God that are presented to me, those are characteristics of love. What Laury Silvers, what Mrs. Silvers does in this book is she opens up with this 99 names of God, and at the very top is the lover. And I like that because it undoes and it challenges perspectives that are intending to make Christianity the religion, the only one. And I really gained so much from reading this book as an observer and looking in, and how I was challenged by what Silvers does and the story that she presented to me. And I am honored that I was able to speak with the author and read her book. And I highly recommend it. And I'm excited to read more. And so this is my engagement with The Lover, a Sufi mystery by Laury Silvers. I highly recommend it to you. And that's it. So that's my installment of Lauren Larkin Does Video. Anyway, I appreciate you, and I'm glad you're here, and thanks for stopping by.